So we're all smiling. Very nice.
I'd like to call the joint Board of Supervisors workshop with the school board on April 1st, 2015 to order. I'll lead the pledge, and if Mr. Kunkel would lead the invocation, I'd greatly appreciate it. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for prayer. Lord, we ask you to be with us on this day as we publicly conduct the business of Powhatan County and Powhatan County Public Schools. Please guide us in our deliberations so we may make intelligent decisions for the employees of Powhatan County and Powhatan County Schools and the citizens. This we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Do I have a request to postpone any agenda items, add, delete, or change the order of presentation?
I would like to make a motion to add a follow-up to the conference call last Thursday, since that was discussed in public, and the public needs to know the results of that.
Can I, so we have a request to add, a motion to add to a discussion item.
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll add that to 7A1. We'll do it before the FY16 CIP program presentation.
And that is before item 3A on the school board agenda.
Okay. So can I get a motion now to formally approve our agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Formally approve yours.
I have a motion to formally approve the school board agenda as amended.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Okay, at this time, we'll have our first public comment period. This is the first of two public comment periods. We invite the members of the public to share their thoughts on the matters and issues that are germane to the county business. This is not a forum for criticism of specific individuals or attacks on any person or group. It is not a forum for political campaigning or promoting a business. Please keep your comments focused on the issues and subject matter of which this board has responsibility. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you're representing a group, you can keep it to 5. Thank you. Anyone wishing to come forward, please do so at this time.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Rob McMillan. I'd like to, first of all, thank the board for this opportunity to speak before you. I represent Powhatan Lacrosse Club.
Excuse me, could you state your name and your name, of course, and your address?
Absolutely. Rob McMillan, 3599 Pineview Drive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I represent the Powhatan Lacrosse Club and I'm spearheading an effort to get Powhatan Lacrosse instituted in the high school as a VHSL sport. Powhatan Lacrosse has grown explosively over the last 4 years, from a handful of players 4 years ago to over 116 today. We have started and initiated the effort with the high school. We are not exactly sure of the formalized process, but we wanted to come before the board to ask for your support to put it in the high school for the 2016 season. I've got several other speakers that would follow me up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ethan Somerville. I'm a varsity player for the Powhatan Lacrosse Club.
Mr. Somerville, can you give us your address too, please? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. 3854 Millmount Drive. I've been playing lacrosse for 8 years, and being just a club team, I've missed out on several opportunities that varsity sports get to have, such as lettering in the sport, participating in pep rallies, having that school pride of playing for your school, and just I'd like to let the younger kids have that opportunity that I didn't get to have, and that would just be really great to see. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Amanda Anderson, and I'm a junior at the high school. My address is 2555 Lockgate Lane. This is my 3rd year playing in Powhatan, but it's my 5th year playing lacrosse. Over the past 3 seasons, I've seen great improvement within my teammates and their confidence and their skill levels, and I can say that it would truly be an honor to play and represent Powhatan High School on the lacrosse field next year as a senior. I hope that you all will take into consideration how much lacrosse will benefit us as a school and how much it can build our school culture, and I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hayden Somerville, and my address is 3854 Millmount Drive. And it would be awesome if, when I get up to high school, to be able to play on a team that people will actually recognize, and I could be happy to wear my jersey through the halls. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to come forward and speak, please do so at this time.
I wanted to know, is Ethan the one that got a scholarship to UVA for academics and lacrosse? Is that?
It's no. There's another player named Kai Snyder.
Oh, okay. Well, very good.
It's at Randolph College. Yes. And my name is Steve Somerville. I'm also representing Powhatan Lacrosse. Address is 3854 Mill Mountain Drive. I'd just like to follow that up in saying that I'm a board member of Powhatan Lacrosse, and we have, it's always been our vision to try and get it associated with the high school so that our kids can play actually for the high school. And as Rob said at the beginning, we have grown substantially over the last 3 years. And I think the future of lacrosse in the county is only going to be brighter and brighter. It is the fastest growing sport in the United States. It's most recently just become a VHSL sport for many high schools in Chesterfield. There's also VHSL in Hanover and VHSL in Rico. Since those teams have become VHSL, it has become harder for us as a club team to schedule games with them because they're only allowed 14 games per season, and they like to fill their schedules with VHSL games. So not being VHSL also presents a challenge for us to get games scheduled. So we have to reach out further and further away to travel to Fredericksburg, Williamsburg, Roanoke area. So, so just one more benefit that being VHSL would provide to the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak, please come forward at this time. If not, I'll close the first public comment period. We do have two, if you choose to stay around. At this point, we'll start our discussion items. 7A, which is a recap of the conference call that took place on Thursday with 2 school board members, 2 Board of Supervisors, and county staff from both the schools and the county administration. So,
Mr. Chairman, yes, I gave an update to the Board of Supervisors at our last meeting, and since the school board here is as well, certainly we had 2 school board members there as well. They can speak to that. But I thought it was great to do the conference call with the people downtown in Richmond. And what we found out is that even though throughout the legislative process we were mainly under the impression that the state was going to have a match for us to leverage a certain amount of money for a potential or an optional 1.5% average pay raise for teachers. What we found out is that things do not appear as they seem sometimes with the Virginia legislature, and that's unfortunate. In that conference call, we learned that there was really a 2-step process. Usually what the past has been, at least the understanding is when the state hands down money to the locality and there's a match, that means usually we pay less. For example, with this basic issue, we had a match of .3913, I think it is, or .39 is our match. So if the state gave us $100, we'd post $39 to leverage $100. Well, that wasn't the case in this situation. And as we found out talking to the experts downtown in the legislature and over at the Department of Education, that it's really a 2-step process. There's the amount of money that is the match, that 39 cents on the dollar, so to speak, that we would need to leverage to get the state money. But what we would have to do is we'd have to actually leverage about 474,000, or basic 474 million, excuse me, almost $500,000 to leverage about 186,000 in state.
Mr. Hodge, you mean 474,000?
No, 407.
474, I'm sorry, 474,000, excuse me.
Thank you.
474,000, excuse me.
Where's that million
That's
coming
right.
from?
I just didn't want the
Almost
million.
half a million is what I meant.
Just-
But 474, you're right, Mr. Chairman, sorry about that. 474,000, we'd have to post $474,000 to actually get the state money of the 186 and change. So we were a little surprised at that for a couple of reasons as a board member. One, I even know one of our board members was actually down there when this legislation was passed. Mr. Nordvig was down there, and that's certainly not what he understood was happening there on the legislative floor, or in talking with Delegate Ware, or people from the Department of Education. And so I think it's very important for citizens that you know that, so that you can address those concerns not only to whoever the new senatorial district candidate may be who gets elected in our 10th senatorial district, which is up for election. John Watkins is retiring. And then, of course, Lee Ware is your delegate downtown for the House of Delegates. But both those gentlemen need to hear from you that, you know, when the legislature down there says you have a state match to leverage some money, with the locality has to match something, it's always understood that it's a smaller portion, not a greater portion. You need to remember the relationship here. Obviously, the state, we're a subset of the state, and we're not independent. And so we look to them to send those dollars down, and then we have that match. So we found out that really we'd have to leverage almost $500,000 or 474,000 basically dollars to get that 186 and change. So we were a little surprised at that. I know I was. I think some of the other members on the conference call were as well. It's an issue we need to address that I'm going to ask our board to put on the agenda for our legislative agenda, so that when the legislature does speak down there, they speak clearly. This was kind of speaking like through mud, and what came down to us was not what actually happened. And so transparency is important. I know for our board, the Board of Supervisors has been for the last 4 years, and I think it's paramount that the legislature speak clearly if they're going to do it that way, so we understand that we have to come up with a whole lot of money to get just a little bit of money from the state. So that's kind of the update from my end.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Williams.
I shared with the board after Barry gave the update that he just provided, that after a transportation planning organization meeting down at the Richmond Regional Planning District Commission, I caucused with 4 other supervisors from other jurisdictions. When we got into the very issue we're talking about now, they didn't know. So it's not a situation where it's just unique to us. I think most elected officials don't really understand how it works. As Larry says, it's kind of complex, and he was right. So what we're going to do is, as Barry said, we're going to get with Lee Ware, we're going to get with whoever wins the Senate District 10 race, and we're going to explain to them what the problem is and ask them to fix it, such that we don't have this problem occurring, not just in Powhatan, but in the other jurisdictions in the Richmond Regional Planning District as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
I'd just like to add that the school system is so used to this because it's called unfunded mandates, and we get them all the time. And as long as people are addressing things, I think that's something we all need to address at the same time, is the unfunded mandates that come down from the state that cost our locality a lot of money.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little bit confused by the term we've always understood in the raise cycles that we've been involved with. I know there's at least one time where some of this money was put up by the state, and the match that the school calculated to certify was the amount to bring the rest of the staff up to the level. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Johns, but has there ever been any misunderstanding on the behalf of the school system how that formula is calculated?
Please, Mr. Johns, please come to the mic and answer. Thank you.
While he's coming up, Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Yes.
The difference here is that in past raises they gave us, they didn't mandate that everybody had to get the average raise.
Right.
They just mandated the SOQ positions had to get the average raise. This time, they mandated that everybody had to get the average 1.5%. Is that correct?
No, that's not.
No.
Oh, the average of 1.5%?
If I may address this, one of the participants in the conference call was Robert Vaughn, who is the director of the House Appropriations Committee staff. And one of the comments that, he made is that the language in the budget document is really boilerplate language, in that and so it's been that way for, 30 years or so. The only, which he's been there that long, the only difference this year was that word average. But always in the past, when they've had offered an incentive for a salary increase, we have always had to certify the Department of Education that we did in fact to give that percent to all employees in order to get the state funds. So it's always been that way. But the school funding and all of the formulas that you have to go through are a complex matter. And Mr. Williams and Mr. Hodge were absolutely correct in that many other elected officials in other localities, they don't really get in and know and understand the nuts and bolts of that. But, on the school side, we do, because we have to deal with those unfunded mandates, as you said, all the time. So.
Mr. Johns, if I could just follow up another question. If school systems, and all school systems, correct me if I'm wrong, have staff well above and beyond the SOQ positions, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
But there's no guarantee that a school system in one county versus another is going to have the exact same number of positions that are above SOQ. That goes to the differences in county by county. So my question is, how can a matching formula be based on composite index when, to me, composite index doesn't have anything to do with the number of positions the school system chooses to have?
The composite index is one of the factors that the state uses in distributing money out to localities. And so that composite index is reset every 2 years. And it is a measurement of the locality's ability to pay. And there are some localities in Virginia that their composite index is 0.8, which means they pay 80 cents on the dollar and the state pays 20. And on a lot of the basic SOQ, the basic aid funds that each school division gets, they do apply that composite index to most all of the funding streams that we receive. But the SOQ positions, as far as the General Assembly is concerned, they do not look at those positions as real people. It is just a funding, it's just a method to distribute money. The number is based upon the number of students that a school division has. And, no school can operate with just those positions. I'll give you a great example. Powhatan County and our SOQ positions from the General Assembly, we have 29 support positions authorized. Well, if I take our bus drivers, I've got 85. If we take our mechanics, our maintenance personnel staff, our food service staff, well over 100 individuals. I can't do that with 29. And so that's just, an example of it. And there are many examples that if you go and look at that specific one, the school systems can't operate with that. So it's just a funding formula. In fact, in an earlier discussion with Robert Vaughn, he explained, all this, which he and I have talked about it before. They recognize that every school system has more people, but in the numbers and the calculation that Susan Hogue had done in the emails last week, all she knows is that amount of money that they've set aside for Powhatan. She doesn't know the total cost that we have for all of our employees. And so that's the only calculation that she could do and include in her email. But we know, because we've been through this years and years, many times, that we've got to consider the calculation for all.
It was confusing to see a reference to composite index in that email. Mm-hmm. And, have you ever used a composite index as a part of a formula to certify that you're meeting the the county share of the, whatever raise comes down from the state? Does the composite index enter that at all?
The composite index is not a part of the certification. What the certification consists of is each division superintendent certifying that they did in fact spend at least enough money to provide, in this example, 1.5% raise, average raise to all employees, and that'll be the certification that they have to make. There's no reference to the composite index in that certification, but it is factored in on the funding.
On the 186,000
Yes,
side,
sir.
it
Yes, sir. It is.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Williams.
Larry, what you're talking about is what we have to deal with the constitutional officers in the comp board. They never send enough money over to actually fund those offices.
Right.
So it falls to us to pick up the difference. What's different about this year, and what triggered this whole conversation, was an email that I received from Lee, talking about, we passed, 1.5% increase, for teachers and instructional aides, and then you read further down, it says, we're putting up the state-supported share.
Right.
So I emailed Lee. I said, Lee, I need to know if it's ball catching time, how much money am I going to be asked to put up? Because, as you know, we're not flush with money now and so on. So we wanted to have that piece of information in preparation, for this upcoming budget cycle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I know Chairman Conca and I have actually been through this whole process from the very beginning to the very end. We actually saw this bill debated on the floor. We had conversation in the hallway with Delegate Ware and a couple other head of the VEA, bureaucrats, et cetera. So looking at the whole sweep of this, I have two takeaways, and I'll be very brief. Number one, this legislation must have been poorly written because none of us could just simply understand it, let alone people that live in our community that don't have all these notebooks and emails in front of them. So I got to say that was poorly written. So this is something we bounce back to the state and say, fix this, please. It'd be great if they give a mathematical example actually attached as an appendix to this bill so you could clearly see how to do it. And I recommend we ask for that next year. Also, this is part B of my first point. If a county over here is applying it one way and a county over there is applying it another way, we're talking about a bill here. That means somebody's not following the law. And, Valerie brought up the word mandate, and it gets into scary territory to me when somebody out there is not following a legal mandate. Now what are we talking about as far as open to lawsuits by people that thought they should have gotten a raise and didn't, or et cetera, et cetera. And that can turn out to be a whole lot of taxpayer money. So we got to get this right. That's my first point. My second one is the good news. I got to tell you, I'm really encouraged from the first minute. Jim Conca and I have been working well together, communicating well together. That amplified to both boards, including this conference call where there's two of each, plus a few others that are helpful in there. We're trying to get the right answer, and we're working together. That is tremendous, and I commend everybody on both these boards. It's just really encouraging to see. We're all trying to get the right answer and get the job done, and that's the bottom line. So, for me personally, it's been through it from the beginning. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Norvig. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just want to just reiterate, because the number was suggested of almost $500,000 that we would have to leverage. We would have to spend $287,286 of local funds in order to receive the match of $186,316 from the county. The 473 number is the total amount that it would cost to give our employees an average 1.5% increase.
That includes the state money, in other words.
Right.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that, and that was clarified.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, ask it. Mr. Williams, you have a question?
Yes, I do, and I think Mr. Tucker's got one as well. Am I correct, Mr. Tucker?
Yeah, but I don't quite know how to ask it right yet. Because
Well,
I think
let
I
me give
just
it a
got,
stand.
I thought I had it down.
I thought I was home free. I was in
287.
in Yellow Brick Road, a couple of minutes ago. All right, now, I was good with the 470, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Sorry,
David, if you add the two together, it equals 474. Okay?
Okay, did that,
So,
because my understanding was we had to put up the 473 to draw down the 186, so that's all wrong.
I'm sorry, that is,
I'm getting
I
enough
hate-
tonight, I got a feeling this is going to go poorly for
and I'm sorry, I think what is on our expenditure and summary analysis sheet is the total amount that it would cost that we would have to spend in order to give an average 1.5% raise. That number includes the state incentive money of $186,316. So we have to spend $287 in order to receive $186.
Okay, so the 1.5% average for all employees is something that you want to do, but is not required to draw down?
No, it is. It is required to draw down the
But that amount
186.
equals the 286.
No.
287, 286.
This is good.
No, 186,
Jim
316.
just says yes, you.
Yeah,
everybody-
287 plus the 186 equals the 473.6.
Which is the 1.5% average increase for all of our employees, which we're required to do, is $473,602.
I'm with you. I think I'm getting it. The 286 is just for the SOQ positions?
No, the 286 is what we have to put up locally in order to receive the state incentive money.
Another
Yes.
way of thinking of it is the 473, 596 is the expenditure. That's what we must spend. You have two funding sources for that expenditure. The two funding sources are $186,000 from the state and $287,000 from the county.
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 So the total, Barry's comment of 474 is correct. That's what the total raise cost us. The state portion is 186, 316. The county portion is 287, 286 to equal the 473. So we're putting up 287, 286, not 474.
To get 186.
But the 473 is the 1.5% for all of your employees, not just the employees SOL.
SOQ.
Look at that as the cost for a 1.5% raise for the entire division.
That's what they had. They were mandated to give a 1.5% raise across the board to all employees.
Average.
In
order to
get the 189.
186.
Right.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to suggest we do a test at the end of this conversation and make it public. And we'll see who passes and who fails. Eric, you're not going to be proud of this.
I'm ready. Sammy and I are ready. We're ready to go. Let's go.
Did you notice, by the way, when we started doing all the math, the students fled?
Yeah, they're well ahead of us probably.
Can you catch them in the parking lot and bring them back in?
Oh, that's too good. That's
Okay,
too good.
Mr. Chairman, okay, well, now I'm confused. I thought we were going to give certain positions the money.
That's why it's important to say the word average increase.
It is a targeted
So-
adjustment.
Right, so are we still doing that and giving everybody a raise?
No.
No, okay, so
Only
we are
the
just doing
individuals
what
that
the
we've
target-
identified are
Okay.
getting a raise. But what the guidance that we've received, and I think that we received in the conference call, is it has to be an average 1.5% increase for all employees. That's the 473 number.
That's used to calculate the number. That doesn't mean that those employees are going to get that amount.
Right.
Right.
That's what you're hung up on.
Okay, thank you.
Test time? You want to take the test now?
I don't want to touch it.
It's clearer now. Thank you.
Well, thank Ms. Weiler. I think I understood her explanation best when you talk about revenue and expenditure. Leave it to the finance person.
If you ratio what the county pays versus what the state provides, That gives you the relative amount of staff we have over top of SOQ. That number would compare more or less with other counties, because other counties have staff above and beyond SOQ, but that number, that ratio may be a little higher, a little lower, depending on what locality you're talking about.
But the 186 to the 241, I don't know if the exact number is.
287.
Doesn't matter.
That's Powhatan's ratio.
Is a heck of a lot more palatable than what I think some of us thought the ratio was.
No, I think, Carson, at our last meeting, I think there was unanimity that we thought it was the 473
Yes, sir.
to draw down to
Yes, sir.
186. So I'm going to thank Valerie for bringing this up tonight so that we can get the certitude, finally, I hope. Again, no test.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And the one last thing I'll leave us all with, and it is, I said it last, in Monday night's meeting, that the proposed budget from the county administrator, this was done within the amount that she proposed to us to consider giving to the schools. It wasn't like they came and said, well, we're going to gobble that up and then we're going to ask you for 287 more. I applaud you for that and thank you.
Just one more number, and I hope I don't complicate things.
Sometimes you got to say, or you might want to be quiet. No, I'm just kidding.
The percentage, we're paying 60%, the state was paying 40%.
Okay.
Which roughly aligns.
Which is their .39.
Which roughly aligns with the composite index.
Wow.
That's a
coincidence.
It is.
Chased our
That is
tail.
only a coincidence, as
Yeah.
Mr. Conca
Right.
pointed out. It's only a coincidence. It was not the calculation.
Right.
Okay, we'll take that coincidence. Okay, any other questions or comments on, Valerie, thank you for adding that, and hopefully it was positive dialogue. So let's move on to 7A2, the FY16 CIP program, capital program.
To start this off, I was asked by Mr. Melton to provide to every school board member a printed copy of the county CIP, and some of you did pick that up last week, and the rest have it in front of you on the dais, and it starts again with page number 1 and goes through page number, it's under your tab 6. It does not have any page numbers on it except for page 1 through page 69. Thank you. It's under the Board of Supervisors tab 6, page 1 through 69. In addition to that, the board members on Monday received a packet that was numbered page 6-1 through 6-18, and it has at the bottom with those page numbers the date of March 30th, 2015. So I have provided that information to the school board members. That's in front of you in the dais. And then also for the school board and for the Board of Supervisors, there is a 6-19, and if you go to tab number 6 for the Board of Supervisors, they're already in your book except for Mr. Hodge. If you go to tab number 6, and immediately behind tab 6, right behind, you'll see page number 6-1.
I'm caught up, Pat.
I know, I'm
But
waiting.
go ahead.
This is stuff we got.
You got this on Monday. It's page
She put it in my
6-1.
book.
I
and-
did, it's my fault.
No, it's not your fault. See, she inserted it in my book, so
Right.
I'm having to go through my book and with the other information already in, trying to
Right.
locate it.
But Charlotte, right behind tab 1, is there not 6-1 dated March 30th? Right behind Mr. Williams.
Tab 6.
That's what I'm talking about.
6-1.
Right behind
We're starting
tab
here.
6 is 6-1 dated March 30th. And then immediately behind that is 6-19 dated April 1st. And so everyone has the same information. You have a packet that's labeled 6-1, starting March 30th, goes through 6-18, March 30th, at the bottom of the page. And you received tonight 6-19 through 6-26, at the bottom of the page, April 1st, 2016. And again, it's in all of the Board of Supervisors packages except Mr. Hodge. It was at front of the place for you. So The numbers that we'll be referencing tonight are the pages 6-19 through 6-26 with the date April 1st, 2015. Did you want me to explain? I don't know what is the pleasure of the boards? Did you want to go through?
Well,
This is the financing of the project.
You presented to us, I think it would be kind of, if you would take the school board kind of through the same, for lack of a better word, the same stuff we heard on
Okay.
Monday night, and then, because they haven't seen it.
Okay.
And,
I will do that. So, yeah, I'm on page 6-19, and at the bottom of the page, it says April 1st, 2015. There are copies for the members of the citizens that are in the audience, if you wish. And there's also 2 budget books that sit at the back for your use during the budget presentations, if you would like to look at those also. They need to remain here, but they're for your use during the meetings. So on 6-19, for the Board of Supervisors, this next 3 pages, just replace 3-14, 15, and 16. So you've already seen this information, but I'm going to go through it briefly. Through it today. At the top of the page are the total projects, and it lists several projects, and at the request of Ms. Emo, I did separate out the vehicle garage so that it shows as both a school and a county project. These are the projects that I understood from your meeting last week that were the priority projects, which is the public safety communication system, the public safety courthouse Sally Port, the Powhatan County Public Schools and County Vehicle Garage, the Powhatan County Public Schools Junior High School, and the Powhatan County Public Schools Powhatan Elementary School major mechanical work. Those are what I understood from the meeting were the priority projects. We reported to you last week that there are proffers for 2 of those projects totaling $1,131,000. All the numbers are in thousands here. And in addition to that, we're proposing that we use capital maintenance reserve to design or start the design on some of the projects. The board has already budgeted and appropriated $90,000 from capital maintenance reserve for the public safety communication system design, and that RFP is almost out on the street. We propose that you use $300,000 of capital maintenance reserve to design the Sally Port, and $500,000 to help design the junior high. The total to design the junior high is about $2 million, and we have right now $1,131,000, so we still need additional funds to complete the design. And potentially, we may be able to see where we stand with capital maintenance reserve at year-end to have more funds to design. So with what we have now in proffers and the use of capital maintenance reserve, the bonding for just these 5 projects would be $51,946,000.
Pat, can I get you to, just so the board and anyone else understands where the capital maintenance reserve funds are coming from?
The board has an unwritten policy. The board has a policy that the fund balance should be 15% of the next year's revenues. That is a reserve that you have, some people call it a rainy day fund. I call it more of an emergency fund. And that is your policy to have fund balance remain at 15%. The board has an unwritten policy that any amount in excess of that 15% will be put into what's called a capital maintenance reserve fund. And it's not actually moved anywhere. It is part of your fund balance that is set aside. We do a calculation for the board every year at the end of the year to determine how much of the fund balance is in excess of the 15%. And the
Mr. Chairman,
board,
may I stop Pat just for a second?
Yes.
Pat, you made the point, I believe, in a previous meeting that the 15%, the policy that we have in place, being as we're a small locality, you told us that that was the amount that we probably need to have in place for the bond rating.
that's correct, sir. Mr. Norvig had asked, is that some written rule that it has to be 15, and it's not. It is a best practices that is put out. It is one that the bond rating agencies look at very closely, and because of the size of our locality, because we are a smaller locality, it is recommended that we have a 15% fund balance. And it is something, because we have that fund balance, that has helped us increase our bond rating and keep that high bond rating. So you wouldn't want to go below that 15%.
Thank you.
Implement your bond rating.
Great point, Mr. Williams. So then the money's removed, so we can,
Right. Okay,
into the
so-
capital maintenance reserve.
Right, and you have used some of this money in the past 2 years, or year and a half, you've used it. And we've shown you another sheet in this workbook that you have in front of you, all of the uses that you've spent the capital maintenance reserve on. There's a list of those for you on a different page. Okay, so those are the projects, and then the next section where it says amount of bonds shows the amount of bonds that you could afford each year, either coming from debt service reduction, so as your debt service reduces, you can take that same amount of money that you're no longer paying in debt service and use it for more bonds. It shows an amount that the debt service could be paid from the Powhatan County Public Schools savings in their budget. They'll have, if they close one of the schools, there'll be $650,000 annually savings. I don't want to misstate it. Dr. Jones knows better. Mostly from administrative salaries. You don't need a principal, an assistant principal, library staff.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm not suggesting we have this conversation now, because I'm going to have to carry forward with her work that she's bringing tonight. But, Eric, at some point, could we have that discussion about, the 6.5, how it is calculated, how you plan to do it?
Be happy to.
Thank you, David.
The next line is debt service that could, bonds that could be issued with the debt service being paid from an increase in revenue. And the increase in revenue is calculated on page 6-12. And
You're using 100%, not the 50%.
in this schedule right here, it is at 100%.
Correct.
And we're going to go to another schedule where it's at 50%, as Mr. Melton had asked me. But on this page right here, it's at 100%.
Mr. Chairman, is this one number here I see, the 6,500?
6.5 million.
6.5 million, that is,
That's the savings from closing the middle school. The 6.5 million is with the debt capacity that we create using
By
a
saving
that's-
$650,000.
That's debt capacity because I heard $650,000.
Right.
This is
It's usually about 10%.
Okay, I understand.
Got it. Good question. You got it?
Okay.
Kim, you okay?
No, I don't understand. I thought we were saving $650,000 by
Yes.
closing the school.
That's correct.
So-
That savings then equates to 6.5 million in debt capacity that you free up through that savings.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
10% is a very, very rough number, and it's also a very, very conservative number. It's usually less than 10%, but very easy to just use 10%. So, the next line we already stated is debt service that could, bonds that could be issued with the debt service being paid from the increase in revenue, and the increase in revenue is on 6-12. And 6-12 are extremely conservative estimates in revenue, and we only use 3 revenue sources. New construction, generating approximately $200,000 every year in taxes from new construction. And for example, in the current year, in FY 2015, the current year that we're in, we already have $415,000 of additional tax revenue from new construction. And we don't yet have the new sheets in that. So I think $200,000 is very conservative. Personal property tax rate increasing at a percentage of 3%, contributing a little over $200,000, and then sales tax at increasing at 8%. And you can see we base our estimates on historic trends, and we historically are trending much higher than both of that 3% and the 8%. So the revenue estimate increases are very conservative.
So you can see at the bottom of that page, you see sales tax has been increasing in FY13 at 15%, 14 11%, estimated to finish 15 at 11%. So Pat's carrying an 8%. Same personal property tax, if you look at that, it was 11% in FY14, estimated 4% in 15, so we're carrying 3% for that, so we're being conservative with those projections.
And I believe the new construction cost, if that's permits and fees, I'm writing $40 checks to the county pretty regularly for my work, so.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Keep writing.
Schools, thank you.
So down at the bottom of page 6-19 is a cash flow analysis. It says funding sources, but how much cash is available each year to pay debt service is what that analysis is down at the bottom. So it comes from those three sources: reduction in debt service, savings at the school, and increased revenues. Again, this is 100% on 6-19. If you go to option A, I'm on 6-20 now. I just came up with 3 options. There's no magic to these options. I just came up with 3 options. And option A has all the bonds in the first year in 17. Option B has what I thought were the 2 top priorities, the top priority of the county and the top priority of the school in the first year. And then option C delays all the projects so that the bonds are not issued till 17. And that's all I'm going to say on these pages, because I have other pages that have the same information for you, but it compares using all of the increased revenue and half of the increased revenue. So rather than delve into the details on 620 and 621, the same information is shown again for you on 6-22. Well, I'm sorry, 6-22 is where we show, again, what I showed. This is exactly what you saw on page 6-19. I just repeated it again. And side by side, you can see the cash flow at the bottom of 6-22 using 100% of revenues versus the cash flow at the bottom of 6-23 using 1/2 of the increase in revenues. That was something that Mr. Melton had asked me to add. So, for example, at the bottom of page 6-22, in FY17, the increase of revenue is approximately $612,000. The increase in revenues in FY17 on page 6-23, half of that, $306,000. The other numbers are equal. The only thing that is changed between these 2 schedules is the increase in revenue. So I'm on 6-22 and 6-23. And now I'm going to show you again those 3 scenarios. But what I've done for you, it's the same information that you saw that we started explaining on page 6-20, but now I have not just option A, but I have option AA. So it's best to go to 6-24.
So can we pause at 622 and 623?
Yes, sir.
So intuitively, the first year, FY16, is 50%, okay?
Yes.
But if you go all the way to your right, the total is $25,241,000 versus $36,910. Can you explain to us, I know you explained to us the other night, why the 2 wouldn't be...
These 2 are not equal, or why they're not exactly half, is that what you're asking? They're not exactly half because the reduction in debt service remains the same, and then those are the first 6 lines there are the reduction in debt service. We're still continuing to use the full amount of the reduction in debt service, and the savings from Powhatan County Public Schools remains the same. We're taking all of it, not half of it. That's why the total number, $36.9 million, is not this half, or it's
not 18.
not twice 25,241.
Just want you explained that the other night.
Mr. Chairman, and all of these scenarios have projects to be determined starting at fiscal year 2020. What are those projects?
I'll get to those when I get to page 24, so it's easier to look on page 24.
Okay.
So 24.
Thank you, Pat, for that.
24 has, at the top of the 24 has option A, and at the bottom of 24 has option AA. The only difference between these 2 options is one has 100% of the funding coming from 100% of the increase in revenues. Option AA has 1/2 of the increase in revenue. So it has less cash flow available to fund the debt service. There's no magic to to why option A has all of the projects being funded in FY17. I just had to come up with some options to bring forward to you, so that's what option A is. All of the 5 projects, the bonds being issued in FY17. Excuse me. The bonds are being issued in 17, so you can start the projects in 17. If that happens, the debt service begins in 18. So you see underneath where it says total bonds, the debt service begins in 18. To answer the question about projects to be determined, I was not going to make any assumptions as to what the school board or the Board of Supervisors wanted to fund after they funded their priority of the top 5 projects. So that's a decision of the boards to make. Which project that was cut are you going to fund next, or maybe there's a different project that you want to fund. That's why it just says projects to be determined. Okay, that's what's available. So I'm going to explain in detail option A, and then I won't have to go through detail on the others. So in option A in FY17, you have available for debt service $612, but you don't have to spend it, so that can carry over to help pay for the debt service in FY18. In FY18, you have debt service of 5.195. You have available in the current year the $1,476,000. So there's a deficit, but you can use the prior year excess of $612. So your net deficit is $3,107,000. This is a net deficit cash flow. And in order to have your cash flow, in order to fund that, the only other source is real estate taxes, and that would be the 10.6-cent increase in real estate taxes. Now, the next year, I'm in FY19 now. The cash flow is such in FY19 that you would then, in 19, reduce the real estate taxes 2.4 cents. So the total real estate tax, which was $1.06 in 2018, would go down to 98.2 cents in 19. Now you go over to 20, and the cash flow is such that you can reduce the tax rate another 3.7 cents. So now you have a tax rate of 94.5 cents. And in the year 21, the tax rate is back down to 90 cents. And in addition to the tax rate being down to 90 cents, you're able to afford issuing bonds in 20 of $4 million, and in 21 of $8.6 million, and in 22 of $13.2 million, and in 23 of $5.1 million, totaling up to the $83 million. So what this is telling you, and what we've known all along, is in the first few years you do have a cash flow problem, but you do have plenty of capacity starting in the year 2020 to 23 to handle the cash flow. So that's a policy decision. Do you want to have a revenue source for a few short years until you have the savings of debt service?
But option A, starts all those projects in 2017.
In 2017. And in fact, we will be designing them in 2016 with capital maintenance reserve so that you could hit the ground running with construction. So that's the assumption in A. Now, AA uses half the revenue from new revenue source. And of course, if that happens, there is a difference in the amount of real estate tax, that rate that would be needed. So I'm going to the very bottom of 6-20, in 6-24. I'm jumping way to the bottom line where it just says, what's the change in tax rate? It's 13.8 cents. In 2018, it goes down by 2.3 cents in 19, 2.6 cents in 20, 4.6 cents in 21, 1.7 cents in 22, and it's back down to 90 cents in 2023. So it's the same scenario now. And because you don't have the capacity, only using half of your increased revenues, the total bonds always in the half revenue option total $58.9 million, which ties back to the page. So that's one option. Briefly, on option B is the Public Safety Communications Center and the junior high starting in 17 with the bonds being issued in 18. The other projects pushed out to 19. That's that option.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. Does the big number here is this junior high school, does that all have to be bonded in 1 year?
No, it does not have to be bonded in 1 year, but if you don't bond it in 1 year, you will incur 2 bond issuance costs.
How much is that?
$200,000. Sometimes they can be to issue bonds. So, and also if you issue a larger bond issue, sometimes you can get a better interest rate, not necessarily. So, but yes, you can issue bonds across numerous years. That is an option.
And this is going to sound stupid, but if you
No,
go with
no.
the half revenue option, well, what's the other half of the revenue used for then?
That would be a board decision.
Okay, so you're choosing it, how much of the resources you're putting on all
On
of these
debt.
projects?
Right, on debt.
Okay.
That would be, how much of your resource do you want to put on capital
Yeah.
projects and debt? Right, correct.
Exactly.
Yes. So, okay, so again, there was no rhyme or reason for option B, except that my understanding is the communication system was a top priority of the board, and that the junior high was a top priority of the school board. That's how
Mr.
option B
Chairman.
came in that way.
Pat, it was my understanding, and I think most of the board members was, in 2017, this was a have-to from the state, that we had to do it.
Not from the state. I believe it's a have to be, but not from the state. It's because the company no longer supports the system that we're on, for the radio system.
But we have to have a radio system.
Oh, well, yes, you have to have a radio system, yes. I'm not sure if that's a mandate from the state, but you couldn't operate a public safety function without a radio
So
system.
in 2017, if the vendor is not supporting it anymore, the curtain would come down?
No, you won't have to take down, but you would not have support. So if something broke, it would be difficult to be fixed. And I don't know exactly the terms of it's no longer being maintained. So I would like to clarify that before I quote exactly what the vendor would and wouldn't provide. I'd like to get that information for you, and I can get that for you.
A lot of manufacturers, they'll get out of the business, but some aftermarket business will pick it up.
Correct, right. And that's why I'd like to get you more information. Also, the RFP that we're issuing is going to provide us with that information, and we're getting ready to issue that RFP. They're going to come back with recommendations on what we should and shouldn't do. They'll be able to get us for sure the information about maybe what exactly does it mean by they're no longer supporting the system, and are there going to be people in the secondary market that could support it. So those are all possibilities. That's why right now we're just doing the study.
Mr. Chairman, I thought also that one of the key problems is that parts, I think that was in your summary previously, Pat, that the system, even if somebody picks it in the aftermarket to service it, the parts are continuing to get more scarce to replace those units that don't function. So there's two components, I think, here. It's a service issue, and I think there's an issue of, if one of the radios needs a part and it's nearly impossible to get that part or manufacture that part or find that part, I think we find ourselves in a difficult situation. So I know you're still looking at it, but that was my understanding, that the system was so old that not only the service life was coming to an end, but the parts issue, you're just not going to find a part. They're going to, the private market is forcing you basically to upgrade, like they do in all situations. So that was my understanding. We kind of really had to have to pull that trigger pretty much in fiscal year 2017 or pretty darn soon thereafter.
Following up on both Mr. Williams and Mr. Hodge, Pat, how old is this system?
Sir, I don't know that off the top of my head, and I can get you that information. And again, I would like to get a full report on what exactly the manufacturer means by no longer supporting the system, because they can say that to you, and it means a lot of different things by different manufacturers. So I'd like to get that
So is it fair
information
to
for you.
say, however, that we have cobbled this thing together and held it together just by the force of repair on an ongoing basis?
Not at this point, no, sir. It's still supported by the vendor, and it's not cobbled together. We still have support from the vendor who's maintaining the system.
Could they put us on notice?
They put us on notice, yes. And again, I would like to get clarification on what that means.
Ms. Waller, Mr. Green presented to us, and I think Mr. Williams, that's referencing, I had understanding that maybe, I don't think he said it was mandated by the state, but pretty much told you you're either going to do it or you're going to be like Barry, you're going to have parts that are not available.
I got it.
Yeah, but fully presented, and I can't remember the years that we've had this system, but it is, he did tell us that it's fully supported right now, but you're not, but I think he presented to us. couple years ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the CIP summary says it was installed in 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
So it's, as far as electronics and communications are concerned, it's a dinosaur.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge.
That's just the way it is these days.
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman, I was at the sheriff's office yesterday, and Sheriff Deputy Dehart and
Nunley?
Nunley, yes. And they were talking to me about something about it is outdated, and it's also about that they want to be able to switch over so that they can talk to the other counties, Chesterfield and Hanover and Henrico and Richmond as well. And
That's it.
Correct. We're not currently able to communicate with the other localities.
And that's important if we were have a major disaster or major something out here. So I thought I'd add that.
Thank you, Ms. Emo, for going and visiting the sheriff.
Well, you're welcome. And I also got to see about the Sally Port. I appreciate Ms. Weiler's explanation at the last meeting. And it is a very dangerous, we walked right out there, and it's very dangerous for our officers, our deputies, to not have any kind of coverage when they escort the prisoners in. It's very close to the sidewalk, so if someone did try to shoot at them or the prisoner, so it's needed.
Thank you. Any other questions, Jim, at this point?
Okay, so option B shows exactly what I said. So on 6-26 is option C. In option C, if you delay the issuance of the bonds until 2018, you do not have to increase the tax rate as much, and in fact, the tax rate would only need to be increased 1.1 cent in 2019 and 4.5 cents in 2020. This is a change from what I presented to the board on Monday, so you need to use the numbers on 6-26. Okay. So it's a, and they would only be, and then back in 2020, they would be reduced down to 90 cents. And down at the bottom of page 6-26, I put that caveat in there that we need to discuss other options with the financial advisor so that maybe the projects could still begin in 2017. There's other options such as delaying principal payment, other options, as Mr. Conker said, issuing only some of the bonds in 17 and some of the bonds in 18. So there are other options to maybe potentially still begin the projects in 17 and issue the bonds later or delay principal payments. So we need to discuss those.
Ms. Waller, just so I understand, so on page 6-19, the four projects that we have in front of us are $52 million, is that correct?
Correct.
And we built this scenario that you're talking about, option C, capturing is this all the revenues, or is this?
Option C is all the revenues. Option C, it says option BA, but it's actually option C.
Okay.
It's
BA,
option CA is half the revenue.
Okay, so CA is half, BA, so, and this assumes $83 million worth of projects.
If you use all the revenues, that's what you could afford.
And if the 50% would give us almost $59 million, which is $8 million more than the four projects we're currently looking at.
Correct.
And Mr. Chairman, the revenue assumptions, I remember you asking about projections for housing values and things like that. Does this assume no increase, or is this a modest increase?
Assumes no increase in housing value.
Current housing value. It does capture the new construction.
But it assumes level. And
Level
what is
value.
the assessment outlook for next year?
I quite truthfully haven't looked at the assessment outlook for next year because it's not, they just started doing the work and it's not part of the FY16 budget, so they haven't looked at it. Quite truthfully haven't looked at it at all.
But Ms. Weiler's work is based on very conservative. Everything that you use as plug-ins have been conservative to make sure that we're always going to be on the safe side of the budget number.
Intuitively, we'd think it would increase some, but, we all know what took place, and Mr. Williams kind of occasionally will bring it up, that the same thing can happen again. So we're trying to be conservative, but yet, to Mr. Marsalis' point, you don't want to be overly zealous, or you don't want to be too far underly zealous in your projections, because it all ties together. So,
Well, what are projections? Projections are usually based on something that's happened in the past, and we use what's happened in the past to project forward. And what do we always find out? They're wrong to some degree.
Well, I think we've done, not trying to pat us on the back, but I think we've been fair with our projections. We've had, we haven't had shortfalls like we inherited maybe as a board. At times, we've been pretty conservative. We hope we continue to be, follow Pat's advice and bring our revenues in as close to our projections as possible, but I tend to want to err on the cautious side, as Mr. Tucker said. So,
I think Mr. Chairman, just one general comment, and we tend not to pay attention too much, perhaps, to the national scene. But I think we do need to pay attention to where the general economy is, and more importantly, where the Fed is, because obviously where the Fed decides to go, the economy can go. And if you've been paying attention to that discussion over the last couple of years, the Fed really has no more tools in its box to creating more economic activity. It's basically panned out. So the issue is, it'll be a real turning point in the next 6 months to probably 12 months to decide what they're actually going to do. Does the economy actually really begin to take hold, or is it just going to kind of skid along the bottom, so to speak? And I think it's important for both boards to consider that, not just to pay attention. It's important, obviously, to pay attention to the numbers we have before us, but other we can do that without paying some attention to the general atmosphere at the Fed. And they don't have any more bullets in the gun. And they've delivered all those with a $4 trillion balance sheet, and that may not be all of it because they've never audited the Fed. So we tend to, I think, assume sometimes that things will continue as they always have had in the past. That's called the normalcy bias, that there'll never be another hiccup, another glitch, another problem like we had in 2007, or even in 2001, unfortunately, when we were attacked. That put the economy into recession. It only took a couple of jets and a few buildings, and we were in a fix. So I don't think things are as secure or stable as they appear. We have the issue over in Israel and Iran still, very, very tense. And I think we need to take stock that perhaps sometimes if we're at this crossroads nationally with where the Fed is and some of the other things, got an election coming up next year as well as far as presidents are concerned. And it's not to necessarily delay things, but it's to proceed with all deliberate speed, focusing on deliberate and not necessarily speed. So I think the board just needs, both boards need to realize that we don't operate obviously in a vacuum. And the Fed really, Janet Yellen's got her hands full, because where does she go from here? She basically, if starts raising rates, we know what that'll do to the housing recovery. Interest rates will immediately go up, and people inevitably don't do things that are taxed more or higher cost. It's inevitable. It's human behavior. That is economics. So if she doesn't raise rates, though, she's got another problem on her hands. And so it's too bad Mr. Marcellus isn't here to speak to that. He's the expert on those things. Basically, you need to know him a little bit more. And so we just need to be cautious about where we're headed to here locally so that we can plan prudently. And I think we've tried, I agree with Billy, we've tried to do the best we can conservatively because things aren't the way they used to be. And as Mr. Williams has often said, the old way of doing things, it's over. You just can't do it that way anymore. You've got to look at efficiencies, consolidations, reorganizations. You've got to do what the private sector has been doing for a long time, and it's now come home to government. So just some words of hopefully advice and wisdom that we consider all those things. And I appreciate all the different scenarios we have, because I think the more we meet, the better this gets on other scenarios of what we can do, what we maybe should do, and when we should do it, because that's another issue. Maybe we need to do these things, of course, but then the next question becomes when. So I appreciate the additional levels of options for both boards to look at. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge.
Mr. Chairman, I look at option C, and it's world different in an improvement over the first scenario that we were presented a couple of weeks ago when we heard the 11-cent figure. I mean, this accomplishes the major items in a reasonable time frame, and the impact is much less to the county. I think it's a lot of good work and steps in the right direction.
Go ahead, Larry. I've got a couple of things I want to ask.
Do you want to go first?
You most certainly can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But you may ask the same question.
Mine's quick, Pat. It's for you. On option C, we start at the 90-cent rate, and then fiscal year 2019 and 2020, we're up a little, and then we go back to 90 cents. Can you just give me a sense in general? I'm not pinning at any numbers. If revenues came in comfortably above what our conservative estimate is, and/or we court some commercial business in here and get additional revenue that way, is it conceivable that we can leave that tax rate at least flat at 90? Or are the numbers just not there?
I have estimated revenues extremely conservative. I have put new construction at $200,000 in taxes each year. I have not assumed that we're going to be building anything at the corner of Stave Mill, and we already know the building permits have been issued and construction has started. So there is new commercial business that is coming in. I think I've mentioned it at least 5 or 6 times. We still do not have the new sheets on the tax roll. So there are new businesses that have already been here and new businesses that we're aware of that are already building that have not been worked in the projections. So the projections are extremely, so I think I have a very optimistic, and I don't believe it's too optimistic. I have a conservatively optimistic viewpoint for Powhatan County as far as new businesses are concerned. And I believe that we will see new business growth here in Powhatan County. We have an economic development plan. Unless that comes back and all the citizens tell our consultant they want absolutely no new businesses, then Mr. Allman's job will be very easy, and we won't bring in any new businesses. But if the citizens are coming back and asking for new businesses, I feel very confident we'll be bringing them in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Any other questions of Pat at this time, or questions or comments? Or
Pat, let me ask you a theoretical on option C again, because it seems like the one that we're drifting toward. The 3.4% increase in real estate tax rate that would occur in 2020 were we to go this route, and despite what Larry and you just talked about, the possibility that it wouldn't be, is there any way that we could spread the 3.4 over to the right over a couple of years, or is it pretty well set that the 3.4-cent increase would have to happen in 2020 because of the numbers at the top of the page?
You could spread that out if you wish to do that. Also, if you look at the deficit is $1.3 million.
Yeah.
And if you continue to use your capital maintenance reserve, you could even decide, we're going to start setting aside funds right now so that in the year 2020, we have that $1.3 million set aside for that debt service payment in the year 2020, and then there isn't that tax rate increase. So there are options for you. And especially in the year 2019, when the deficit is, I hate to say the word only $321,000, because for our individuals, $320,000 is a lot of money, but for an organization, it is a lot of money, $321,000, but it is something that definitely we could start setting that aside right now. In fact, you have that in your capital maintenance reserve right now, and you could say, we're not spending it on anything else other than this debt service payment in the year 2019.
This really attaches to Mr. Norvik's question. That would bring it close to a flat rate. If we had the courage to do what you just painted.
Right.
If we bit the bullet and said we're not going to spend that money except on debt service between now and then, we could. So the answer to Larry's question would be almost a yes.
So Mr. Tucker, and you're right, it would be. And then if your revenue projections are coming over, you'll know those things, and you're going to put it, if we stay with our 15% policy and our unwritten policy to move the excess, any excesses that we had to that, you would have more money in there, essentially, because of the, good budgeting or whatever you want to say.
So if I understand you, Mr. Chairman, if I understand Ms. Waller correctly, basically, if we were able to put more into capital, that brings those numbers down sooner. Or if you were able to, of course, you can't bind a future board, but if you were able to put more in there, I understand Mr. Tucker's point that if you were to say we're leaving that there and not touching it, can't control the future boards, of course, but if we put more into capital, there'd be more available there for next boards to utilize. Is that right? I'm understanding that correctly, to bring that number, the 321 and the 1.3 million down.
Right. Those are only one-time cash flow needs. It's not like you need to have that $1.4 million. It's not like you need that annually. You have a one-time cash flow need of $321,000 in 19 and $1.3 million in 20. You can be accumulating those funds now, hold on to those, and then spend them in that 1 year for those debt service payments when you need those.
Mr. Chairman, and the need, the cash flow issue in 2020 is based on an undefined project of $4 million.
Correct.
No, I have to correct you there. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That $4 million that's in 2020, that debt service doesn't start until 21. And you have it in your current debt capacity to fund the $4 million in 20, the 8.6 in 21, the 13 million in 22, and the 5 million. So even when you finished with the $51 million of projects and you made it past the year 2020, you have debt capacity for another $31 million without increasing the tax rate. So the $4 million in 20, the debt service doesn't start until 21. That was a simple answer. So okay, so it's not in that computation of what you need in 20. But the good news is once you make it past that year 2020, again, you have that $31 million of project bond capacity that you wouldn't have to raise a tax rate for, that you could be looking at other projects for the future.
Mr. Hodge regularly remarks upon this board, and no board for that matter, can bind the future board's action. And he's absolutely right. My concern is the other side of that coin. We can also not bind future boards not wanting to spend more money on top of what it is we've already started. So it's another flag around conservatives on not to touch projects to be announced money, because future boards are going to have other priorities that they may want to also start on top of the things that we might choose to start. And that frightens me a little bit, because we can't project into the future what might be needed. We have no idea. That's why I would recommend leaving the project TBD to be left alone, because we may have a major problem and we don't have any idea of future boards, and they've got to have some access. We can't take the well to dry.
Mr. Chairman, to Carson's point, if you have projects, and let's just say you didn't do everything in 2018, for example, or you did do everything in 2018, with the change of boards on election day, they could choose not to fund some of the projects, all the projects.
Or some new projects.
Or some new projects. That's the form of government that we live in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one follow-up question for Ms. Weiler. I know that we'll eventually get an update, and one thing that's not on here, maybe it impacts us, maybe it doesn't impact this analysis, and that is, I know we're going to get an update on the Cobbs Creek issue of when that might occur and what that might be. So I just want the school board to know that there's a component here, I guess. I don't know if there's any other components. I think that's the only other component we don't completely have of when that might. Maybe it doesn't impact this because maybe it's farther out. Maybe it does because it creeps in. But we don't have that number. And that's why I was working with Henrico to try to solidify those numbers so we know exactly what our obligations are for Cobbs Creek and when those obligations might be incurred. So that's one thing in the analysis. The school board just needs to be aware of. We've got something with regard, very simple, called water, that we're going to have to deal with this board or the next board, and future boards will continue to have to deal with that issue. So that, and I think we're going to get an update that, Pat, was that June or sometime in June? I think June, an update on that.
Cobbs Creek is coming to you in late May, early June.
Okay.
The
Great.
water that's way off, and that's in the future, and as we said on 34 and 35, those are dependent on growth, and
Right.
those are way off in the future.
But, so late May, early June, we'll have an update on Cobbs Creek of where we maybe stand on that, which will be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Comments, Dr. Jones?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to throw out for consideration is that one of the things that I think the school system could consider deferring even further is the Powhatan Elementary mechanical. It is just checked with Mr. Wilson, and if that needed to be pushed back a year or two further, even if it wasn't bonded as part of these projects to free up more debt capacity, that is something that that I could feel comfortable in recommending.
Thank you, Dr. Jones.
I know both on the county side, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
both on the county side and on the school side, we've talked if we could do the design of the transportation facility and start that design in FY16, we would have better numbers to know how much it is that you do need, and it could potentially then be less than the $4 million. And as I said, we are currently doing the RFP to design the public safety communication system, and that is going to be complete in December of 2015. So we'll have a better idea on that also. And if we could get the funds, we already have a good number on the junior high, but we could, with capital maintenance reserve, start the design process on the junior high.
Just for clarification, from that $34 million is construction costs, the A&E costs have been taken out of that number?
The only thing that's been taken out of that $34 million is the $1,131,000 that we currently have set aside. So it's not all of the A&E.
Gotcha.
It's only $1,131,000.
Mr. Chairman, one further speculative question, I think, and this may be to Mr. Johns, if he's still here, or maybe to Mr. Wilson, I'm not sure. We know that 34 placeholder is not what that school is going to end up costing. We pretend in their public life when we build something that the number that we put on the books to begin with is what it's going to cost. We all know that that's not the truth, is we don't say it out loud. So here's my question of whomever can answer it best. How much was the original estimate for the high school?
Please come to the mic, please. Thank you.
Carson, may I make a friendly
Absolutely.
Amendment to that question?
suggestion? Let's go to the most current. Let's go to Flat Rock
All right,
Elementary.
change it to Flat Rock. I'll answer two questions. The first question is, what was the original estimate? That is a piece of number like this 34, and what did it actually end up costing us? This is not an accusatory or an indictment.
No.
It's just to get the facts on the table.
It doesn't have to be to the penny, Russell.
I would be glad to give you the exact dollar amounts, but I don't have that in my head. But I can tell you what we said up front those buildings would cost, starting with Pocahontas Elementary School 20 years ago, the high school project, and Flat Rock Elementary School all came in at or below what our estimates were. And I can get you the documentation that will show
No,
that.
I accept that if you've disabused me from a prejudice, I guess, that I have in general, that public projects always end up costing substantially more than the original estimate. What you're telling me, that's absolutely not true.
No, sir. We have I'm proud to say we have a good track record in the projects I've been involved in.
I think in the
Just
recent...
can't let him retire.
I think some of the recent press that's been in the paper would indicate that some people, some localities didn't do as very good as well as you guys have done, and thank you for that.
And we've been fortunate, I must say, I mean, because, especially on a new piece of land, when you go in, you don't know if, you know, as close as we are to Midlothian, if you end up on top of an old coal mine, for instance, and had to redesign the entire site. The high school was very tricky because that site started out independently with water and sewer. And then we partnered with the county and got the county water and sewer going with funds from the school that I don't want to use the word transfer because it wasn't a transfer, it was taxpayer money. It was just used by the county instead of by the schools to develop water and sewer in that area. So there are variables that come into it, but again, I stand firm on every project I've been involved in. We've been at or under
Thank
on
you
our cost.
for your feedback, and thank you for standing firm. Mr. Chairman, I yield to Mr. Nordley.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, Russell, since I don't want you to have to come back up again, this is in reference to the elementary school mechanical projects. And I just heard Dr. Jones say we can push that a little bit into the future.
Yes, sir.
Would that be, could you do that into the future 1 year, 2 years, or more than 2 years? Can you give me some kind of time frame on that?
What my recommendation would be, instead of spending that, I think it was $3 million?
4.3.
4.3.
Instead of spending that all in 1 year's time period, we can do it on a step-by-step basis and do sections of the building at a time instead of doing the whole project at one time.
So rolling?
Yes,
Maybe a
you could
rolling
spread it
number?
out over a period of time, and we could potentially use some of that capital funding, if that comes to fruition, to do those type of projects with.
Could you push much of it at least 2 to 3 years down the road? Would that be reasonable? Because I'm looking at, the pinch comes 2 years in a row, and that would be in fiscal year 19 and 20. Would it be possible to spread things maybe 2 to 3 years in the future, or that a large amount of that rolling number that far to even these numbers out a little bit? I won't hold you to it.
It could be, but it's kind of like driving that car when it's right at 200,000 miles. You may get another year out of it, and you may go out tomorrow morning and it may not move again.
Russell, I have a van with 211,000 miles on it. Thank you for saying that. If I need a ride home tonight, you'll be the first one I call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Russell, if you could, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. The mechanical work that we're proposing being done on Powhatan Elementary is a 30-year replacement. The junior high is how old?
That building opened up in 1972.
So 43 years. Has any of that work been done in that school?
Some of the units have been replaced. We've got some that are original equipment.
Right.
The multi-zone units on top of the VOTEC wing are vintage 1970. Well, actually, the VOTEC was 74 or 75, I believe.
I think my point is that I think 30 years is what the manufacturer recommends for replacement on those parts, which is what we would be able to do if we're looking at 2017, 2018 for replacement. So pushing it out a year or two, I think we would be okay, but I know Mr. Wilson doesn't want to say that definitively because you never know. But certainly it's still functioning well in most places, and we could continue to do some of the work we've been doing at the junior high, replacing individual units to get it through if we needed to.
Thank you, Dr. Young.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Frank.
Mr. Carson's point, mostly architects in the comprehensive facility studies recommended a 5% increase per year for every year the project was delayed. I'm assuming these numbers do not reflect that 5% increase, because that would be, at 34 million, that's 1.7 million, to the point suggested. Just want to make sure we're aware of that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Williams.
Going back to something Barry brought up earlier, the big fear that the Fed has, and has had for some time, is deflation. It's deflation. They've brought the interest rates down almost to nothing because they want you to invest in the stock market, in the economy. They don't want you to put the money in the banks. Look, the same fear is in China right now. They don't want deflation. So, going back to my earlier statement, Sammy, making projections, it's hard. I can tell you I am no economist. If you want to look at my portfolio, I can back it up. But you make a good point, Sam.
Comments, questions, or anything? Pat, I just want to thank you for putting this together as quickly as you did. I know there's a lot of, to Barry's point, while these scenarios come to us and they help us digest and understand, the dialogue from the school board, the questions you guys are asking are wonderful. I like option C, to Mr. Norvik's point. It'd be nice to not have to even consider a tax rate increase. It'd be nice to see revenues increase and be able to do this, and one day possibly lower a tax rate. But I appreciate the hard work. It helps me and brings me a level of comfort to be able to see, and I truly feel like the numbers are conservative and that they're real, and that's important to me. So thank you for the hard work to everyone and your staff. Charlotte, thank you. I know y'all been burning midnight oil. I think I've seen Pat's car there on some Sundays, seen Pat's car there on some Saturdays, and I do applaud you and thank you for that.
May I, one last comment about CIP before we move to 7B. I like Pat's cautious optimism. I think seeing these numbers, thank you, seeing these numbers the way we're seeing them and plowing through them, as tedious and as painful as it might be, and as much work as we're asking of both staffs, this is the kind of data-driven decision-making that we've all said we wanted. And I feel good that we are within this close of being able to close this issue and do what needs to be done, and not do violence to the tax rate, not do violence to the people who are on fixed incomes and what have you. I'm very proud of staff, and I'm very proud of these men and women up here who are asking tough questions and listening to the answers and trying to figure out a way through this minefield that we all face called finances in a bad time economically. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. I guess we'll move on to 7B, FY16 budget.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Williamson?
This might be for another meeting, but, you know, it goes back to what I asked Eric about the $6 million in the savings and how, you know, that was calculated. You know, we haven't had that piece of discussion about, I think you said the closing of the middle school. That's why I want to talk about next, but we can do that in the next meeting.
Okay. I agree, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to also broaden that maybe just a little bit. I know we've had the presentation about the options with the junior high and all the studies and the surveys and all that went into it, but this is one of those components, you know, that we've looked at. And when we do that follow-up kind of workshop on that issue, maybe broaden it slightly just to look at, you know, if there's any other possible options that the study didn't look at, or they looked at and just said, no, we're not even going to go down that path. Not to restudy anything, but just so that both boards kind of said, look, we've looked at the entire universe, and I'm not sure also if this is discussion for that workshop. I mean, I know other localities have faced this. I don't think we're the only one in Virginia that's faced this issue. I'm just not sure what those localities are in the recent past that maybe have faced similar issues that we're facing with an aging building, and maybe what they did with similar fiscal constraints. Maybe they had some novel ideas. I'm the first one to acknowledge I usually don't have novel ideas. I just use whatever I've got before me. And so it might be good to have that discussion too, just a broader discussion, not only of the savings and how that works, but just that, you know, these are the options that really we have, or is there anything else out there, or even hybrid models or something like that. So we might do that to just, you know, so that when the boards finally do, you know, make decisions, or the board makes decisions, we've kind of looked at all those. Like Carson said, you flushed out all the data, even as painful as it is, you know. So.
How quickly do you feel, David, that you would like, Barry, and just as dialogue, how quickly do we want to see this? Do we want to see it before May? Do we want to see it in May?
Oh, no, I want to see it, I want
Okay.
to see it before May.
Okay, so we talked the other night about the 13th, since it wasn't scheduled. I don't know whether this.
Right, we had a budget workshop scheduled for April 13th, and we did cancel that one.
That's a Monday.
And that's a Monday. And we are also available on other dates. I mean, it's up to maybe there's a meeting on a Tuesday.
Guys, you know, I mean,
I'm
We
not
would usually
available.
meet, Pat, we had one scheduled already for the 13th. I know I had my calendar blocked out on that already, even though it got taken off. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that would be great if the other members are conducive to that.
I'm not available for the 13th, but certainly that shouldn't stop the meeting.
And I'm not either, but again.
How about the?
What about the 22nd? Dr. Jones, are you meeting on April 21st? Is the third?
Yes, the 21st is our monthly meeting in April.
Okay. The 22nd is a Wednesday?
Washington?
I'm here.
Val, are you available on the 22nd of April?
what is the?
A Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yes,
It's the day after a school board meeting.
yes.
And the purpose of this meeting, Mr. Williams, is to talk about the future of the middle school.
Yes, yes, and, you know, talk about the future of the middle school, and specifically, you know, want to understand, you know, with the closing of the middle school, how is this all going to work? You know, when we did, you know, the school tour back in fall, this was brought to my attention, so I would like to better understand. I've just got a 500-foot, you know, overview of what's happening, but I'd like to get into it, like we got in tonight, about how it's actually going to work and quantify savings and things like that.
So you're looking to quantify back to the $650,000 a year savings?
Yeah, well, more than that,
Just understand how
we're
it's going to-
proposing different uses for the building, you know, for the board or the school board. Wouldn't we want to have a full discussion of that?
My reason to ask the question is that I think we can talk about the $650,000, but if we're going to talk about future uses of the building, I think it's a little premature without talking to people in the community. I think we can have the discussion amongst ourselves and say this might be an idea that we put out there, but I think we would really rather, from my perspective, I would like to hear what the community would like to do with that. That building becomes available for something else.
Well, again, that goes back to what is it going to be used for, so that you can understand if there is savings, you know, where do they come in? But the two are linked.
I agree they're linked.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
So, you know, I would like to hear what's on the table. I mean, if you want to have a community discussion, you know, it starts with a public discussion. So, let's.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
So, Mr. Williams, would you like that meeting on April the 22nd or whatever it was to be publicly announced? We would anyway.
Absolutely.
But to invite the.
No, I mean, you're announcing, you know, we announce our meetings. What I want is a starting point, you know, for understanding as the elected officials what's being, you know, put forward as an option for saving, what I'm hearing, $6 million.
$650,000.
Excuse me. 650. I'm making that quantum leap to your bonds.
Right.
I apologize. But no, I want to be able to understand what we, you know, I briefly talked with Eric walking down the hall, remember?
Mm-hmm, I do.
So, I mean, it's that simple. It's not a big deal.
So again, the meeting would be to understand the savings, understand the transition of the building. One of the things they asked have said on the committee that examined the Mr. Kunka and I did, and Mr. Moore and Sammy, one of the things that we did not want to get hung up in, and I can't speak for everyone, was what would happen with that building, because that was kind of separate to the charge of that group, was to figure out what was the next options to meet the school demands. So the meeting can take place and should take place. Will we come out of there with a definitive plan?
No.
But I think so. Understanding the $650,000 savings, and then having some dialogue about what could happen.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. You're not going to make that decision in one meeting. I hope we won't.
It only took us 11 months to figure out what to do with the.
We're working on how many years on the bus garage?
Woman World took us 11 months, so hopefully it won't take us 11 months. So.
Mr. Chairman, if we want to have an honest discussion about the future of that building, any potential savings, if there's going to be any other use, you're going to have conversion costs from the school to some unknown other use.
And that's part where David's going to. It's 650 from the uses that's now used for, but.
That simply comes off the school's operating budget.
Right.
But there's going to be
It's
something
going to cost the
happening.
county and the taxpayer some part of that to adaptively reuse it.
There's a cost. If we chose to have an adaptive reuse of it for, you know, housing of, you know, the school folks and the county administration, there's a cost associated with the adaptive reuse. So all I'm saying, if we're putting all the pieces out there and we're trying to make an informed decision going forward about savings that are going to be used for proposed CIP projects, let's have the discussion.
And something that we should pursue is there may be funds available for repurposing school buildings. Ms. Ayers was involved with refurbishing Maggie Walker, and there may be revenue streams to help the county out with repurposing that
Historic
building.
preservation bonds is what we used.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do that with the junior high.
Historic isn't the word I would use for that building.
Dated maybe, but not historic.
Mr. Chairman, and we've quantified the $650,000 in operational savings, so I can send that to Ms. Weiler tomorrow for distribution to the BOS.
And my understanding from what Mr. Hodge is, Mr. Hodge would like to go over the alternatives that came out of the study and go through all those alternatives, which ones the committee did not consider and why we did not consider them.
Yeah,
And
kind
I
of
think-
the pro-con analysis, in other words, what else was considered in there. We went over the options and had that presentment on what they did, but like the other, just so both, not everybody had a chance to be in on that. I know some board members on our board did and some didn't. So just so that everybody's on the same page saying, yeah, there's all these other options that were looked at, and this was a negative, and this was a positive, but the negatives outweighed the positive, kind of just an analysis of that. So we know, what happened on that, the outskirts, and they narrowed it to these options. Yeah, that'd be great.
And I know we've said this before, but I was part of the steering committee, the facility study, and we made it very clear that it was not our task to determine what would be done with the middle school. And we just had general conversations about different ideas that people had, but it was not one of the, or ever intended to be, one of the outcomes of the facility study is the use of that building. Because it could definitely be decided not to do anything with that building.
All the more reason, I think, for Mr. Williams' point to have the discussion, so we know what, at least, the starting point. Like you said, you're not going to make a final decision, but have a starting point discussion, because I think as Mr. Tucker pointed out, there would be, depending on what you end up doing with it, like the War Memorial Building, there's going to be some cost to it to the county on that side. I know the schools have saved on their side, but we have a cost that now comes back on the other side of the equation. So what's the net number? If there's a net number, maybe that is the net number, maybe it's not. So,
Mr. Chairman, could we also have a picture of how much of the actual building is the historical part that we want to preserve, and then how much has just been added on? Because I think that we want to preserve the historical part for sure, but I don't know how many years later some of the other wings had been on. So could we have some kind of figure for that meeting then to talk about that? And then, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, we can bring you floor plans and kind of sketch out where the original high school building was and the other wings and different iterations of the school that have expanded out so that everybody can see it. And then we'll also try to provide some information about the condition of the building in those various parts. And that would just be a rough guess based on performance that we've experienced over the last few years, but we can do that as well.
Well, do we need to, does Dr. Prince have the historical, or do we have that? Does
We have
Mr.
that.
Wilson?
Yeah, Mr. Wilson has that information. We have all the plans and everything, but we'll certainly invite Dr. Prince to the meeting, and since she has some good perspective, and I know has worked hard on preserving the history of that building.
Right, so we want to understand which parts we really want to preserve that are historical, and the others that had come later. I want to be able to know what, I don't want to say aren't as important, but, that maybe we don't have to preserve.
Gotcha. Yep.
Thank you. So are we okay with setting this meeting on the 22nd?
if we could, Mr. Chairman, if we could do 6 o'clock, that'd be great. It's just a little hard for
gonna
those of us
say,
who are working.
starting at 6
to
is
get
a
here
little
at 5,
easier for people to
as
get
well
here.
as citizens probably as
Travel.
well.
So let's set it 6 o'clock. Do we need to set a location now, or do we need to check calendars?
We have to check the availability of this room.
So it'll be posted on our website once we determine, and then
Posted on the school's website, I guess, once we determine the location.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Might suggest it might be worthwhile to have the meeting at the middle school.
Absolutely.
And that way we could walk and,
Great suggestion.
since we'll be talking about that building primarily.
Absolutely.
So I'll be happy to check and see if that's available.
Great
So let's set the
suggestion.
middle school.
Tentative unless we hear different.
In the library, nice place to meet.
Thank you. Right, so we have 7B, FY16 budget.
Staff has, I have only one handout to for our board on the FY16 budget. It is a correction to page 44 of the BOS request for information that was handed out on Monday. The handout looks like this. There was an error in the formula for the number of patrol officers to the total sheriff's department. It's not 36.78, it's 51.72. In addition to that, we provided you the information that Under Sheriff DeHart sent to you in an email, which has flow charts of the sheriff's office. We have nothing else to present on the county budget or the school budget. We stand ready if you have any questions on either one of those budgets.
Mr. Chairman, I have just a couple of quick questions. And I had a citizen ask this question. I don't know the answer, so I'm just kind of relaying a citizen's question, really. And it piqued my interest a little bit, but I don't know the numbers, and so maybe Larry can help us with this if need be, or maybe Dr. Jones can. That was looking back at it's the 14 audit of the school budget. That it shows an excess there, if I've got my numbers from my citizen correctly, of that audit for 2014 was an excess of $380,000, and there was like a transfer. There's really two questions here. One was a transfer, and that citizen couldn't determine where that transfer went, the $380,000. There was some depreciation of $457,000. I tried to explain that a little bit because I do know about depreciation, but I'm not sure what that was about. And then on that audit as well, there's three questions. One, the $380,000, kind of where that went, and then the $457,000 in depreciation. There was he said about 1.3. I think it was about 1.3 million. He thought in unrestricted cash, but he wasn't sure, and that's maybe that's a broader question. In other words, the unrestricted cash position, because I know you have all these requirements and mandates and things that happen. So, like some citizens sometimes will see our the fund balance and they'll think, wow, this happens a lot. They'll call me up and say your fund balance is X. Well, why do you have to keep that? Well, we heard the reason tonight really is you want to keep the rating agencies happy. You better keep your fund balance 15%. Otherwise, you're all going to pay a lot more money. So, in your bonds when you issue your debt. So there's a really valid reason for that. And so those are really three questions that he had asked, and I didn't have an answer to them at all. The 380, there was a transfer, the depreciation, and there was the unrestricted cash position. He was trying to decipher, but really couldn't kind of divine that, so to speak. So I don't know who might be able to address those questions, or maybe you need to get back to us on those. But those were questions that was brought to me about the school budget, and really it was probably more from the audit from last year. But
we'll confirm this for you. But if there's a transfer, the $380,000 is most likely for SRP, the transfer for SRP. And the cash at the end of the year is the school has to have cash on hand to pay the salaries for the rest of the contracts for all of the teachers. So those contracts usually take for June, July, and August, and that's usually what most of the cash is on hand for in the school district at the end of the year. But we will confirm those numbers for you.
Okay,
and the question on depreciation, you want to know what assets we're
depreciating?
I guess
he just, and I didn't have answers, and I'll relay this. When you get these to me, I'll give a call back. But like I always try to do, but he just seemed to lift as high at almost $500,000, close to that. That was the 14 audits. Those numbers were from the 14 audits, so they're in there.
But does he understand that it's depreciation on school buildings? So you're depreciating the high school, you're depreciating Flat Rock Elementary.
Right.
I'm sure there's no depreciation left on the junior high school, it's so old. But the two new schools are still being depreciated. And we have the new buses that are being depreciated. A lot of the old buses are fully depreciated. Is he asking for a list of all the assets that are still being depreciated?
No, it was kind of a summary. I don't think necessarily a list, but a summary of what that was. And if it's a mixture of both hard assets in the sense of ground, dirt, and then obviously mobile assets, obviously tangibles.
Right. Dirt is never depreciated. It's only buildings.
Well, I know, but the buildings attached to the dirt is considered. I understand that.
Right.
We'll be happy to research that and get back.
Thank you.
That answers to those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge.
Thanks.
At this time, we'll have another public comment period. If you'd like to speak, come forward at this time. State your name and address.
Hello, how y'all doing? My name's Carl Ozer. I'm at 1446 Donovan Mill Lane, Powhatan, Virginia. I wanted to thank Mr. Melton for answering my request to have the meeting at 6 tonight. I appreciate that. I also appreciate, if y'all would keep more important meetings at 6 o'clock. I think that it's harder for people, like I work in Richmond, so I think it's harder for people to come back to Powhatan at by 5 o'clock, and I think that these are more important meetings, so I just appreciate that y'all are trying to help, with the transparency and stuff like that, so I appreciate that. Also, I just, wanted to say, I did hear Mr. Hodge say something in regards to, 2001 and 2007 when it came to the economic I wouldn't say depression, but the economic situation that we're in, I do think that, it's been 14 years since 2001, and it's been 8 years since 2007. I do think that we're using the economy as a scapegoat, or at least it sounded like that, and I think that we need to start taking the situation into our own hands, and as a member of the public, I really would just like to know, who do we hold responsible? I think, I don't see who we hold responsible anymore. I mean, I hope that, as y'all are elected officials, that would hold you responsible for the situations that occur, but it seems that, we blame the economy for these types of situations, and I don't know if that's actually right. We have a government right now that artificially is altering our economy, and y'all are part of it. So if the economy is the problem, then y'all are the problem as well. And I'm not, criticizing y'all personally. I just think this has to be noted. I'm just tired of these excuses. And, we're trying to act conservatively, quote, unquote, conservatively. Well, what does that mean? To me, it doesn't seem too conservative. Now, it may not, this year it might be conservative to what you have, but in the past, it kind of seems that, were you conservative? I think the past is now what we are occurring to the future, which is right now. And I think that problems of the past is no longer is why we are here. So the people that have been on board for so long, it's part of y'all's problem. So I just said we got to get something done. We got to work together. And one last thing, I do have a question when it comes to asking for, is there a way to have nonprofits or people to start volunteering? I know I've been trying to volunteer in my community, and I really would like to see, if you ask me, I know I will volunteer my time to try to save us money for our county. So I don't know I know that everything is, able to be saved money, but I think that we should also, hey, let's get together as a community and let's try to make something happen with volunteers. Ask me. I'm happy to help, and I think I can gather some people to do something to save costs. So I'm also asking y'all for y'all's help. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lugar.
Charlie Bennett at 4687 Bell Road. I'd like to start off tonight by saying I appreciate Mr. Norvig's comments at Monday's meeting, and that my main purpose here is to learn, and actually I have learned a refreshingly good amount so far. And I don't think you all are boogeymen at all. A lot of what the public thinks of politicians and public servants is generally negative, and for good reason. But I see up here in front of me members of the community and members who dedicate their time to serve us, and I do believe you all dedicate a lot of your time, and I appreciate that. Let me gather some thoughts. They're so easy to think about when you're in the audience. But anyway, I just wanted to express that I am learning a lot and learning a lot of good things. So, thank you guys, and appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to come forward and speak, please do so at this time. At this time, we have closed the public comment period. At this time, we have county administrator comments. How about school superintendent comments? At this point, we have board comments. Does any board members or school board members have any comments?
Just want to thank you guys. Great meeting.
Same here. This has been a long time coming, and I think in the last, this week and last week, we've made a lot of progress.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out, I've kind of been championing the cause, I guess, a little bit for the two deputies we've been talking about for now since about my first meeting or so, maybe the second meeting. Last time we discussed the numbers, and now we've got a revision to those numbers, and we've got a schematic. I just wanted to be fair, because we talked about solving two deputies through greater efficiency, recommending maybe kindly, because we don't mandate, well, we can mandate, but we don't want to micromanage the sheriff's department and how they organize and do business. But last meeting, a couple nights ago, it was based partially on a percentage of patrolmen to total sheriffs. In other words, how many people behind the steering wheel versus how many people total in the sheriff's department in uniform, sworn deputies. And since we were speaking about it, last time the number was rounded up 37% of the patrolmen were out there as a percentage to total sheriffs. That correct number is about half, 52%. That's a fairly significant difference, in my opinion. So, in other words, that number means they're not as top-heavy as the first number we talked about 2 nights ago. So, as we're making decisions, just kind of keep that in mind, that if we're asking them to be more efficient, they're not as top-heavy as we thought they were 48 hours ago. Also, pardon me, it would affect the amount of patrolmen per 1,000 capita in the county. If there are more patrolmen out there, percentage-wise, that means we have possibly greater coverage. Had to look into that. So we were making some assumptions 2 nights ago that now we find are somewhat different. So all I'm saying is I'm encouraging the Board of Supervisors to rethink and look at these new numbers, and it may or may not alter your final decisions on dollar amounts, but that's something to consider. And I want to thank the Sheriff's Department for putting those numbers forward.
Thank you, Mr. Norvig. I have a couple quick comments.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Any other comments from the school board?
Six-year plan? Oh, excuse me. Do you have that, Dr. Jones? Okay, I was wondering where the 6-year plan we wanted to give to the Board of Supervisors for their information.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Just the BOS.
This is for us? Yes.
I wanted to also thank the county staff for all these scenarios. I mean, it's pleasing to me to see progress made on this. I want to thank the Powhatan lacrosse players and coaches for speaking. Mr. Lozer, comments you made on the economy, they hit home. There's aspects of the economy that terrify me. And I was looking for a quote here earlier that kind of fits in, and I'm pleased to say who said it. Edmund Burke, who's the father of modern conservatism, said, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing." And I feel like at this table for the first time in years that we are making progress and we are going to do something to meet the needs that are defined by the county and by the schools. You can chew your nails all you want about the economy and what's happened in the past, but the bills keep coming, the needs are still there, and you've got to address them, you've got to move forward. I'm just happy to see progress, and thank you, Mr. Bennett, also for your comments. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kunkel. To finish up, I want to, typically I won't do this, but Mr. Norvig, I want to thank you. You hit the ground running. You were elected in February, and to jump in, and Mr. Williams and Mr. Hodge will tell you, to jump in the budget season was probably a brutal battle to fight, but you've done it, and you've done it very well, and I applaud you for your efforts to get out and see people, to see the different identities in the county, and just roll your sleeve up and ask good questions, so I thank you for that.
Can I just ask a question, Mr. Chairman? Which direction am I running?
I'm not sure. Sometimes you're in neutral, sometimes you're in reverse, and sometimes you might be going forward.
Just want to know.
To Mr. Lozier, this board made sure that we started posting all boards and commissions that come open on our website so that people could go on and apply for those versus us picking and choosing. So I'd encourage you to go to our website and look for those opportunities, and thank you for agreeing, suggesting that you volunteer. Hopefully there will be a board and commission that you put your name in for, that you feel comfortable. What we did in the past, maybe we were selecting, and we decided that we thought it was best that people would have the opportunity to fill out an application, and then the board would then have an opportunity to filter through those applications and get the most qualified person. So, thank you for everybody's hard work. I do appreciate it tremendously. I know that we've made progress, and I think as long as we continue forward, I think we'll accomplish great things. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Please,
David.
adjourn, please.
Second.
Motion to adjourn. How about a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Same for the school board, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Adjourn.
Mr. Williams is always our fastest guy to adjourn. I want you all to know that.
He's also your oldest.